The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched species evolve and go extinct. They had solved problems that seemed impossible. But on this day, in the great chamber that floated at the center of known space, they faced something they had never faced before. They faced true fear. Ambassador Tellus stood at the center of the chamber. He was a tall being made of living crystal. His body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows across the walls. But today, those rainbows seemed dim. His voice, which usually rang like beautiful bells, now trembled like cracked glass. 17 systems have fallen, he announced. In 40 rotations, the Wrath Swarm has consumed everything in its path. Ships, stations, entire planets. Nothing we have done has stopped them. The chamber erupted in noise. 100 different species shouted in 100 different languages. Some demanded action. Others demanded retreat. A few simply wept. The wrath had come from the dark spaces between galaxies. Nobody knew where they originated. Nobody knew what they truly wanted. They only knew what the wrath did. They ate. They consumed. They turned living worlds into dead rocks and moved on to the next meal. Elder Maxis rose from his seat. He was from the feline consortium, a species that resembled the great cats of Earth, but stood upright and possessed brilliant minds. His fur was gray with age, but his eyes remained sharp and golden. "We have tried diplomacy," Maxis said. "The Wrath do not negotiate. We have tried our weapons. The Wrath absorb our fire and grow stronger. We have tried running. The Wrath are faster." He paused and looked around the chamber. "There is only one option we have not tried." The noise died down. Everyone watched the old cat. "We must contact the humans." Silence. Complete and total silence. Then the chamber exploded again, but this time with protests. "The humans are savages," shouted a delegate from the Mineral Collective. "They have been isolated for 2 centuries for good reason," cried another. "They are unpredictable and dangerous." Maxis waited for the noise to fade. Then he spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "Yes, they are all of those things. They are savage when they need to be. They are unpredictable. They are dangerous. That is exactly why we need them." He looked at Telos. "The Wrath are predators. They have never met a species that hunts back. The humans are hunters. It is in their blood. It is in their bones. They have spent their entire history fighting things that should have killed them. And somehow, they always survive." Telos considered this for a long moment. He remembered the reports from 200 years ago, when humanity first made contact with the galaxy. They had been a young species, barely able to travel between stars. But they had already survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that killed millions of their own kind. They had split the atom and used it to destroy cities. They had poisoned their own world and then found ways to heal it. The council had decided to leave them alone. Let them develop in isolation. Let them figure out their own path. The truth was, they had scared the council. Not because of their weapons or their ships. Because of their eyes. When you looked into human eyes, you saw something that most species had lost millions of years ago. You saw the willingness to die fighting. "Send the message," Tellus finally said. "Request whatever forces they can spare." The transmission traveled across the stars at speeds that bent physics. It reached Earth in 3 days. It arrived at a building in a city called Washington, in a nation called the United States. The building belonged to the United Defense Command, the organization that protected Earth from threats both known and unknown. General Marcus Cole read the message twice. He was 63 years old. His hair had turned gray at his temples, and deep lines marked his face. Those lines came from years of difficult decisions. Wars fought in shadows. Lives saved and lives lost. He had seen things that would break most people. He was still standing. He called his senior staff to the briefing room. They gathered around a long table, watching him with curious eyes. "We have received a request from the Galactic Council," Cole said. "The same council that quarantined our entire species 200 years ago. The same council that treats us like dangerous animals." He let that sink in. "They are asking for our help." Colonel Grace Harper leaned forward. She was Cole's second in command, a woman of 45 with short, dark hair and a mind like a razor. "What kind of help, sir?" "Troops. They are facing an enemy they cannot defeat. Something called the Vreth Swarm." The room went quiet. Everyone had heard rumors about the Vrath, ships that appeared from nowhere, worlds that went silent overnight, horror stories told in the dark corners of space stations. "How many troops do they want?" Harper asked. "As many as we can spare." A young officer spoke up. "Sir, if we send a significant portion of our forces off-world, Earth will be vulnerable. We do not know if we can trust the Council." Cole nodded. "That is a valid concern, which is why we will not be sending an army." Confusion passed through the room. Harper studied Cole's face and saw something there. A hint of a smile. A dangerous light in his eyes. "Sir?" she prompted. "They asked for troops. They will get something better." Cole turned to her. "Colonel, pull up Project Lazarus." Harper's eyes widened. "Sir, that program was classified beyond top secret. Those individuals were supposed to be left alone. They earned their peace." "I know what they earned. But the galaxy is burning, and we are the only ones with water." Cole looked around the room. "The Council thinks humanity is dangerous. They have no idea. They have seen our soldiers. They have not seen our legends." Harper pulled up a file on the main screen. 7 names. 7 faces. 7 people who had done impossible things and walked away. "These are the best we have ever produced," Cole said quietly. "Each one of them worth more than a battalion. Maybe more than a fleet. If the galaxy wants to see what humans can do when we are truly pushed, then let them see." He pointed at the screen. "Find them. Wake them up. Tell them the world needs them one more time." "And if they refuse?" Harper asked. Cole almost laughed. "They are human, Colonel. We do not refuse when people need help. It is not in our nature." 3 days later, helicopters and cars and unmarked vehicles spread across the United States. They carried the same message to 7 different people in 7 different places. The galaxy had called for help, and humanity was about to answer in a way no one expected. The first helicopter landed in Montana on a ranch that stretched for miles in every direction. The land was beautiful and empty, exactly the way Jake Mitchell liked it. He was standing by a fence, fixing a broken post, when he heard the sound of blades cutting through the air. Jake was 45 years old. His hands were rough from honest work. His face was tanned from long days under the sun. He looked like any other rancher in Montana, but his eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of a man who had seen war and somehow made peace with it. He watched the helicopter land without surprise. He had been expecting something like this. Men like Jake always knew when the world was about to call them back. A young officer stepped out and approached him. "Sergeant Mitchell?" "Just Jake now. Sir, the world needs you." Jake looked at the fence post. He had almost finished fixing it. Part of him wanted to say no, to stay here with his horses and his quiet life. But he knew he would not. He could not. "Let me get my bag," he said. Emma Price was teaching a class in Chicago when her phone buzzed. She was 38 years old, with kind eyes and steady hands. Her students knew her as a gentle woman who spoke softly and smiled often. They did not know about Jakarta. In Jakarta, 12 years ago, Emma had spent 48 hours in a war zone. Bullets flew overhead. Buildings collapsed around her. And she kept working. She treated wounds that should have been fatal. She performed surgeries with tools that were meant for kitchens. She carried dying soldiers on her back to safety. When the final count came in, she had saved 847 lives. The military gave her medals. She put them in a box and never looked at them again. Now she stood in front of a classroom, teaching young nurses how to save lives in normal conditions. Her phone buzzed again. "Excuse me," she told her students. She read the message and went very still. Then she took a breath and turned back to the class. "I need to leave. Study Chapter 7. There will be a quiz." She walked out the door without looking back. Tyler Santis did not exist. Not officially. His military records had been erased so completely that even the people who erased them could not remember doing it. He had spent 20 years doing things that governments could never admit happened. He had been a ghost before ghosts were popular. Now he lived in a small apartment in Seattle. He read books. He watched old movies. He waited for something, though he was not sure what. When the knock came at his door, he was already packed. He opened it to find two men in suits looking nervous. "How did you know we were coming?" one of them asked. Tyler almost smiled. "I know everything. It is what I do." He grabbed his bag and walked past them. He did not need to ask where they were going. He already knew. Ryan Foster was easy to find. He ran a boxing gym in Detroit, teaching young people how to fight. He was impossible to miss. At 7 feet tall and 300 pounds of muscle, Ryan looked like someone had carved him from stone. But the children in his gym were not afraid of him. They laughed and joked with him. They called him Coach Ryan and told him their problems. He listened to every one of them. Ryan had carried a broken mech suit for 40 miles once. The suit weighed 2 tons. Inside were 6 members of his squad, all wounded, all unable to walk. The enemy was close behind. Ryan walked for 3 days without stopping. When he finally reached safety, he collapsed and slept for a week. The doctor said he should never have survived. Ryan said the same thing about his squad. He was not about to let them die. When the black car pulled up outside his gym, Ryan was teaching a 10-year-old how to throw a proper punch. He looked at the men stepping out and sighed. "Go practice your footwork," he told the kid. "I need to talk to these people." The conversation was short. Ryan made one phone call to arrange someone to watch the gym. Then he got in the car. Lily Chun was painting a sunset when the message arrived. She lived in Vermont now, in a small cabin surrounded by trees. Her paintings were beautiful, full of color and light. Nobody who bought them would ever guess that the artist had once broken into the most secure buildings on 4 continents. Lily was small and quiet. People often forgot she was in the room. That was her greatest weapon. She had stolen secrets from governments. She had planted evidence that toppled dictators. She had walked through laser grids and past armed guards like they were not even there. Now she just wanted to paint. She read the message on her phone. She looked at her half-finished sunset. Then she put down her brush and began to pack. The sunset could wait. The world could not. David Park was playing chess in San Francisco. He sat in a park, across from an old man who had been homeless for 20 years. David came here every week. He always lost on purpose. It made the old man happy. David's mind worked differently than most people. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. He could predict movements before they happened. During his military career, he had planned operations that seemed impossible. Every single one succeeded. Not because of luck, because David did not believe in luck. He believed in math. The message reached him between moves. He read it, calculated the odds of various outcomes, and made his decision in 3 seconds. "I need to go," he told the old man. "Same time next week?" The old man nodded. David left his king exposed on purpose as he stood up. It was a small gift. The game would end in the old man's favor. Maya Torres was meditating in New Mexico. She sat in a small room in a monastery, her eyes closed, her breathing slow. She was 52 years old, the oldest of the group. Her hair had gone silver. Her face was lined with years of hard living. Maya had been a chaplain before she became a soldier. She had tried to save souls before she learned to save lives. Some people thought those two things were opposites. Maya knew they were the same dot. She had talked suicide bombers out of their vests. She had negotiated with men who wanted to burn the world. And when talking failed, she had ended threats with a sniper rifle from distances that should have been impossible. Her faith had never wavered. Not once. Even in the darkest moments, she believed that there was something worth fighting for. The message appeared on her phone during her meditation. She opened her eyes and read it slowly. Then she stood, collected her few possessions, and walked out into the sunlight. 3 days later, 7 people gathered in a briefing room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. They looked at each other with the recognition of old warriors. Some had worked together before. Some had only heard stories. But they all understood something that words could not express. They were the same. Broken and healed. Tired and ready. Human. General Cole entered the room and looked at them. 7 ordinary people. Middle-aged. Unremarkable. But he knew the truth. He knew what they had done. He knew what they could do. The galaxy is dying, he said simply. They asked for help. You are that help. Jake spoke for all of them. When do we leave? Tomorrow. Nobody argued. Nobody asked for more information. They simply nodded. The legends were awake, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The human transport ship was small. It was old. It looked like it had been through 100 battles and barely survived each one. When it docked at Station Prime, the greatest space station in the galaxy, it seemed almost embarrassed to be there. Ambassador Tellus watched through the viewing window as the docking clamps locked into place. Behind him stood representatives from 30 different species. They had gathered to see the human reinforcements. They had expected warships. They had expected thousands of soldiers in advanced armor. They had expected the kind of force that could match the Wrath swarm. The airlock opened. 7 people walked out. Tellus felt his crystal heart sink. He counted them again, certain he had made a mistake. No, 7. Only 7. They did not look impressive. They wore simple clothes. They carried small bags. They looked tired, like travelers who had been on a long journey. One of them, a large man with dark skin, yawned as he stepped onto the station. This is what Earth sends? Telos demanded. His voice rang with disbelief. 7 aged warriors against the swarm? Colonel Grace Harper walked beside the team. She had come as their liaison, the bridge between humanity and the galaxy. She heard the disappointment in the ambassador's voice. She smiled. Ambassador, you asked for our best. These are them. The alien delegates exchanged worried glances. Some whispered to each other in their native languages. The general tone was clear. Earth had failed them. Earth had sent nothing useful. Earth had doomed them all. Elder Maxis of the Feline Consortium studied the humans with his golden eyes. Unlike the others, he did not show disappointment. He showed curiosity. Something about these 7 beings made his fur stand on end. They moved differently than other creatures. There was no wasted motion, no nervousness. They walked like predators who were pretending to be prey. Perhaps, Maxi said quietly, we should not judge too quickly. 3 hours later, the alarm started. A Wrath scout fleet had emerged from hyperspace. 12 ships made of living tissue, each one carrying 1,000 drones. They had been drawn by the station's energy signature. They had come to feed. The station fell into chaos. Civilians screamed and ran for shelter. The combined fleet scrambled to launch their fighters. Officers shouted orders that nobody followed. Jake Mitchell stood at the observation deck, watching the approaching swarm. The Wrath ships looked like twisted nightmares. They pulsed with strange life. Tentacles extended from their hulls. Eyes that were not eyes watched the station with hungry intent. General Cole stood nearby, communicating with Harper through a small device. "Permission to handle this, General?" Jake asked. Cole did not hesitate. "Show them what humans do." Jake turned to his team. No long speeches. No dramatic moments. Just a simple nod. Tyler moved first. He was already walking toward the hangar bay before anyone else reacted. Ryan followed, his massive frame somehow moving in complete silence. Jake was right behind them. The other four spread out across the station. David found a tactical terminal and began processing information faster than the alien computers could handle. Emma located the medical bay and started preparing for casualties. Lily disappeared into the maintenance tunnels. Maya accessed the communication system. Ambassador Tellus watched the three men board a single dropship. "What are they doing?" "That is suicide." "One ship against 12? Harper shook her head. "Ambassador, I suggest you watch carefully. You will never see anything like this again." The dropship launched. It was tiny compared to the Wrath vessels. A mouse attacking elephants. The alien delegates were certain they were about to witness 3 deaths. They were wrong. Tyler piloted the ship with movements that seemed impossible. He dodged biological weapons that should have been unavoidable. He spun through clouds of spores that melted metal. He flew like the ship was an extension of his body, because to him it was. Everything was a tool. Everything was a weapon. He brought the dropship down on the lead Wrath vessel. It landed hard, cutting through the living hull like a knife through flesh. Jake and Ryan were out before the ship stopped moving. The inside of the Wrath ship was a horror. Walls that breathed. Floors that moved. The air smelled like rotting meat. Wrath warriors emerged from everywhere, creatures with too many limbs and mouths full of teeth. Ryan did not wait for them to attack. He charged. The first Wrath warrior was twice his size. Ryan hit it so hard that it exploded. Not died, exploded. He grabbed the next one and used it as a weapon against its brothers. He tore through reinforced walls with his bare hands, creating paths that led deeper into the ship. Jake moved behind him, his rifle singing. Every shot found its target. He did not miss. He had never missed in 30 years of combat. His mind processed the battlefield faster than any computer, finding angles and opportunities that should not have existed. Tyler became a shadow. He slipped between Wrath warriors like smoke, killing them before they knew he was there. His knives moved so fast they were invisible. The enemy died in confusion, unable to understand what was happening. Back on the station, David had taken control of the defense grid. His mind connected the dots between 1,000 different systems. He found weaknesses in the Wrath fleet formation. He calculated firing solutions that the alien computers called impossible. Then he proved them wrong. Emma coordinated the evacuation of the wounded, somehow appearing wherever she was needed most. Lily had found the station's secondary weapons array, long forgotten and covered in dust. She brought it online in 4 minutes. Maya's voice echoed through every speaker on the station, calm, steady, filled with quiet confidence. All civilians proceed to shelter zones in an orderly fashion. Do not panic. You are safe. We are here. Something about her voice made people listen, made them believe. Even the aliens who had never heard a human speak before felt their fear begin to fade. The lead Wrath ship died from the inside. Jake, Tyler, and Ryan found its neural center and destroyed it. The massive vessel shuddered and began to fall apart. They reached their dropship and launched just as the ship exploded behind them. The remaining Wrath fleet fell into chaos. Without their command ship, they lost coordination. They became individuals instead of a swarm. And individuals could be picked apart. David transmitted his battle plan to the combined fleet. It was elegant and brutal. The alien commanders followed it without question, too stunned to do anything else. Their weapons found every weakness David had identified. One by one, the Wrath ships died. 12 ships. 7 minutes. 0 human casualties. Silence filled the observation deck. Ambassador Tellus stared at the debris field where the Wrath fleet had been. His crystal form flickered with colors that meant shock, disbelief, and something close to fear. The dropship docked. Jake, Tyler, and Ryan walked out. They were covered in Wrath blood. It was black and thick and smelled terrible, but they moved like they were taking a walk in the park. "What are you?" Telos whispered. Emma appeared beside him, wiping Wrath blood from her hands. She had gone to the dropship to check on her teammates. "We are just people, Ambassador. People who have had a lot of practice." Maxie stepped forward. His golden eyes studied the 7 humans with new understanding. "I told the council we needed hunters. I did not realize what that truly meant." He bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect among his people. "Forgive us for doubting you." Jake shrugged. "Nothing to forgive. We are used to being underestimated." He looked at the debris field, then back at the aliens. "That was a scouting party. The real fight has not started yet." Harper stepped up beside him. "What do you need?" "Information, maps, enemy patterns, and a place to clean up." He gestured at the black blood covering his armor. "This stuff smells worse than it looks." Despite everything, several aliens laughed. It was a strange sound, mixing with the fading alarm klaxons. But it was a good sound. It was the sound of hope. The 7-minute war was over. But the legend was just beginning. News of the 7-minute war spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species heard the story. Every world watched the recordings. 7 humans. 12 Wrath ships. 7 minutes. The math was impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive now gathered in quiet rooms and watched the footage again and again. The way the humans moved. The way they fought. The complete absence of fear in their eyes. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was something the galaxy had never seen. But the 7 humans knew the truth. That had been the easy part. The Wrath hive mind was ancient beyond measure. It had consumed civilizations for millions of years. It had faced resistance before. It had always won. But something new had happened at Station Prime. Something had killed its children in a way that felt different. The hive mind felt an emotion it had not experienced in a very long time. Curiosity. It wanted to understand these creatures. It wanted to study them. And then it wanted to destroy them so completely that their species would never dare to resist again. The following weeks became a nightmare for the Wrath and a miracle for everyone else. The 7 humans deployed to falling systems across the galaxy. They arrived ahead of evacuation fleets, buying time with blood and fire. They never asked for help. They never waited for reinforcements. They simply appeared where they were needed and did impossible things. On Tertius IV, the Wrath had cornered 3 million refugees in a mountain complex. The only escape route was a narrow tunnel that led to the other side of the range. But the tunnel was collapsing, damaged by Wrath weapons. The engineers said it would fall in 6 hours. Ryan Foster arrived alone. He stood at the entrance of that tunnel for 6 hours and 12 minutes. The Wrath came in waves, hundreds, then thousands. Ryan did not move. He did not retreat. He simply killed everything that came close. His armor melted from the acid in Wrath blood. His bones broke in 11 places. A lesser man would have died in the first hour. Ryan kept fighting. When the last refugee made it through and rescue teams finally reached him, they found Ryan surrounded by mountains of dead Wrath. The pile was so high that it blocked the tunnel entrance completely. He was still standing, barely. His legs gave out as the medics approached. "Sorry," he whispered. "Could not walk to you." The medics stared at him with tears in their eyes. He had held the line against an army. He apologized for not being able to walk. On the orbital platforms of Nexus, the Wrath had captured a station and were using it as a staging point for an assault on the capital world below. The combined fleet could not destroy the station without killing millions of prisoners still aboard. They could not board it without losing thousands of ships. Lily Chun went alone. She infiltrated the captured station through a waste disposal vent that was 7 inches wide. She spent 18 hours crawling through spaces that should have been impossible for a human body to navigate. She avoided Wrath patrols that numbered in the thousands. She left no trace. She made no sound. When she reached the navigation center, she had 3 minutes before discovery. She needed 5 minutes to complete her sabotage. So she worked faster. She rewired systems that alien engineers did not understand. She programmed a course that would send the station directly into the Wrath fleet, massing nearby. Then she ran. The explosion caught her in a maintenance corridor. The fire burned 40% of her body. She dragged herself to an emergency shuttle that barely functioned. She launched as the station fell from the sky. Her radio crackled with static as she flew towards safety. "Mission complete," she reported. Her voice was calm despite the pain. "Anyone have some burn cream? I could use a lot of it." Tyler Santis became a ghost among ghosts. He hunted Wrath Queens, the leaders that controlled individual swarm fleets. In 1 month, he killed 17 of them. Nobody saw him do it. The Wrath started posting triple guards on their command creatures. They built walls and barriers. They filled rooms with motion sensors and biological alarms. None of it mattered. Tyler passed through their defenses like mist through a net. The queens died in their sleep, in their command chairs, in the middle of giving orders. One moment they were alive. The next they were not. The Wrath began to fear the dark. That was something new. That was something Tyler considered a victory. David Park fought with his mind. He orchestrated defensive campaigns across 100 star systems, predicting Wrath movements before they happened. His plans saved billions of lives. They cost the swarm millions of drones. The hive mind could not understand how he did it. Their movements were perfectly coordinated. Their strategy was flawless. Yet somehow, the defenses were always waiting. The traps were always set. It was like fighting an enemy who could see the future. David sat in a small room on Station Prime, staring at screens filled with data. He barely slept. He barely ate. His mind was always working, always calculating, always searching for the next pattern. He turned the Wrath's greatest strength, their unity, into a weakness. Because if you could predict what one part of the swarm would do, you could predict what all of them would do. Emma Price saved lives that should have been lost. She mastered alien biology in days, learning to treat wounds that human doctors had never seen. She developed treatments that became standard across the medical fleet. She worked until her hands shook, and then worked some more. On one station, she performed surgery for 37 hours straight. When she finally stopped, she had saved 212 patients. Then she took a nap for 4 hours and started again. The aliens began calling her the healer who never stops. They were not wrong. Maya Torres became something nobody expected. A symbol. She traveled to threatened worlds and spoke to the frightened populations. She stood in refugee camps and disaster zones. She looked into the eyes of beings who had lost everything and told them that the galaxy was worth fighting for. Her words crossed language barriers. Her faith crossed species barriers. Aliens who had never understood human religion began to comprehend it through her. Not the specifics, not the doctrine, but the underlying truth that there was something worth believing in, something worth dying for, something that made the darkness less dark. And then there was Jake. Wherever the fighting was worst, wherever hope was dimmest, Jake Mitchell was there. He led from the front. He took wounds that should have killed him. He got back up. Again and again and again. On one world, he fought for 4 days without rest. On another, he carried a wounded ally through enemy territory for 100 miles. On a third, he faced a Wrathassault alone to buy time for a hospital ship to escape. He should have died 100 times. He did not. The galaxy began calling them the Immortals. The name spread from species to species, translated into 1,000 languages. It was not accurate. They were not immortal. They bled. They hurt. They got tired. But they refused to stop. They refused to accept the limits that the universe tried to impose. And when you refuse to accept limits, impossible things become possible. The hive mind watched all of this with growing concern. These 7 creatures were disrupting patterns that had remained unchanged for millions of years. They were teaching the galaxy how to fight back. Worse, they were teaching the galaxy how to hope. Something had to be done. The hive mind began to gather its forces. Not for another raid. Not for another attack on some distant world. Something bigger. Something that would end this problem forever. It would strike at the source. It would destroy the world that had created these legends. It would destroy Earth. And the 7 humans, scattered across the galaxy, saving lives and winning battles, felt the darkness gathering. They knew what was coming. They had always known. The real war was about to begin. The hive mind made its decision in the cold darkness between stars. These 7 creatures had caused too much damage. They had killed too many children. Worse, they had given hope to species that should have surrendered long ago. That hope was spreading like a disease. It needed to be cut out at the root. The great swarm gathered. 10 billion drones. 1,000 ships. Every queen that still lived. They came from all corners of the galaxy, summoned by the ancient intelligence that controlled them all. They formed a fleet larger than anything the universe had seen in 1,000,000 years, and they set course for Earth. General Cole received a warning 3 days before the swarm arrived. Long-range sensors detected the approaching darkness. The numbers were beyond belief. The analysts thought their equipment was broken. They ran the calculations again and again. The answer never changed. Cole sent one message across the stars. Come home. The 7 humans received that message in different places. In a medical bay, Emma put down her tools and walked toward the hangar. In a command center, David closed his screens and took a breath. In a shadow, Tyler emerged from a mission and headed for his ship. In refugee camps and battle zones, the others did the same. They came home. The Galactic Council offered help. 100 species volunteered to defend the world that had saved them. Ambassador Telos himself offered to lead the combined fleet to Earth. Cole said no. This is our world, he told them. We will defend it. If we fall, then you can avenge us. But this fight belongs to humanity. Telos did not argue. He understood something that he could not put into words. This was not about strategy or tactics. This was about something deeper. Something human. When Jake and his team arrived at the orbital defense platform above North America, they found it full of familiar faces. Veterans of 100 campaigns. Men and women who had served with legends and become legends themselves. They had come from retirement homes and farms, from offices and schools. They had put on old uniforms that did not quite fit anymore. They had picked up weapons they had not touched in years. They had come to fight. Cole stood beside Jake as they watched the approaching swarm on tactical displays. The numbers were terrifying. The darkness seemed endless. The council wanted to help, Cole said quietly. I told them no. Why? Because some fights you need to face yourself. Because if humanity falls defending Earth, we fall as humans. Not as part of some galactic alliance. As ourselves. Jake nodded slowly. He understood. It was not about pride. It was about meaning. If this was the end, it would be their end. On their terms, and if we win? Jake asked. Cole smiled. It was the first real smile Jake had seen on his face in months. Then we win as humans. Then we show the galaxy what we are made of. The Battle of Earth began at dawn on the third day. The wrath came like a tide of darkness. Their ships blotted out the stars. Their drones numbered more than the grains of sand on every beach on Earth. They expected to overwhelm the defenders in hours. They were wrong. Humanity threw everything at the swarm. Every weapon. Every ship. Every soldier who could stand and fight. From fresh recruits who had never seen combat to veterans so old they needed help walking, they stood against the tide. The 7 humans fought together for the final time. They moved through the battle like threads of fire, each engagement turning the tide in their sector. Ryan held a breach in the orbital platform's hull. The wrath poured through, hundreds every minute. He killed them all. His arms broke. He kept fighting. His legs gave out. He fought from his knees. When his body finally failed, he was surrounded by so many dead wrath that the breach was blocked with corpses. Emma ran between wounded soldiers, saving lives with steady hands and a calm voice. She worked without rest, without pause, without hope for herself. When her heart gave out after 72 hours, she was holding a young soldier's hand, telling him everything would be okay. Lily guided a strike team into the heart of the Wrath command ship. She found the core, the nerve center of the assault. She planted charges that would end the battle. She did not have time to escape. She did not try. She just pressed the button and smiled. David coordinated the defense until the very end. His mind never stopped working, never stopped finding solutions. He kept humanity in the fight when everyone else would have given up. He turned certain defeat into possible victory through sheer force of thought. Maya spoke to the fighters across every channel. Her voice carried them through the darkest moments. When people wanted to run, she reminded them why they were fighting. When people wanted to surrender, she showed them there was still something worth believing in. She kept fighting until a piece of debris took her life, and even then, her last words were a prayer for the living. Tyler infiltrated the primary hive ship on the second day. He was alone. He was always alone. He moved through the living corridors like a knife through flesh, killing queens and destroying command nodes. He sent one final transmission, a string of coordinates marking the location of the hive mind's central consciousness. Then the signal went. Dead. Jake followed those coordinates. He led a team of the best soldiers Earth had left. They cut their way through the wrath, following the path Tyler had cleared. They found him surrounded by dead enemies, his body broken. His mission complete. Jake carried Tyler's body for a mile before putting him down gently. Then he turned and kept going. The hive mind waited in the deepest chamber of its ship. It had not felt fear in a million years. But as Jake Mitchell walked through the door, it felt something close. You should have stayed away, Jake said. His voice was quiet, tired, but absolutely certain. You should have left us alone. The hive mind attacked with everything it had. Drones, weapons, powers that had destroyed civilizations. Jake took them all. He bled. He broke. He kept coming. When he reached the core of the hive mind, he had nothing left but a knife and his bare hands. It was enough. The hive mind screamed. It was a sound that echoed across the entire swarm. Every drone felt it. Every ship felt it. The ancient intelligence that had connected them for millions of years was dying. And then it was gone. 10 billion drones fell silent. 1,000 ships drifted without purpose. The great swarm was no more. Jake walked out of the command ship alone. He stood on its hull as it began to break apart, looking at Earth floating in the distance. Blue and green and beautiful. Home. A rescue shuttle found him 3 hours later. He was barely alive. The medics said it was impossible for him to have survived. Jake just smiled and closed his eyes. 1 year later, a memorial was built in Geneva. 7 statues stood in a circle, larger than life, facing outward as if still protecting the world. Emma with her medical bag. Ryan with his fists raised. Tyler emerging from shadow. Lily caught in mid-run. David looking at something only he could see. Maya with her hands lifted in blessing. And Jake in the center, his eyes on the horizon. The inscription at the base was simple. The galaxy requested troops. Earth Senates. Best. Species from across the galaxy made pilgrimages to see it. They came to understand what Ambassador Tellus had finally grasped on that first day at Station Prime. They came to understand what made humans different. It was not technology. The galaxy had better technology. It was not numbers. Humanity was small. It was not even strength or speed or intelligence. It was something simpler. Something older. Something that burned in the human heart like a fire that refused to go out. When the universe said something was impossible, humans did not listen. When death came for them, they fought back. When everything was lost, they found something worth saving. They were not special because they could not die. They were special because they kept choosing to live, to fight, to hope, even when it made no sense. Even when the math said they should give up. That was the human gift. That was the human curse. That was what made 7 ordinary people into living legends. And now, every species in the galaxy knew the truth. If darkness ever came again, if something threatened the stars, there was one world they could call on. One species that would always answer. Humans. They would always send their best. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best was enough. On a quiet ranch in Montana, a young woman placed flowers on a simple grave marker. Jake Mitchell had passed away peacefully, surrounded by friends, 5 years after the battle. He had spent those years teaching children how to ride horses. She read the words on the marker and smiled. Through her tears, he held a line. Above her, a ship from the Phi-Line Consortium passed through Earth's atmosphere. Elder Maxis was visiting again. He came every year now. He said he wanted to learn more about humans. He said there was something about them he still did not understand. But really, he just wanted to remember, to honor, to never forget what 7 ordinary people had done when the galaxy needed them most. The stars were quiet now. The wrath were gone. The darkness had retreated, but the legend remained. And it always would.